Hello, everybody. I'm Troy Anderson, the founder of RepairShopr, and this is Taco Tuesday. Today I've got Kyle Weems, the founder of iFixit, on with us. Hello, Kyle. How you doing?
Hey, Troy. Good to talk. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, totally. So we've got some tacos. We're all ready to go. We're gonna just do like open mic today and talk about whatever's going.
Awesome. We have our taco shop next door is Santa Cruz Taqueria. They are the best taco shop in the county.
So you got legit tacos. Good job.
Legit tacos, and they have been discovered. The lines over there are extreme now.
Oh, yeah. We got a little lucky today with. That was a lot of noise. We got lucky today with our timing because I got down before the lines. Guacamole on the table. I've got tacos Chukis again. This is a.
There you go.
I wasn't gonna do repeats for a long time, but I had a call go wrong and had to get out and get some tacos.
We're pretty much on repeat with our taco shop. They're good enough that there isn't really a reason. There are, and this is being in California, we're kind of spoiled with our tacos. But there are, there's a different taco shop in each county that has different. So like the taco shop next door, they're best at their carne asada. We've got one in a town 10 minutes to the north that has a better al pastor. So you gotta kind of pick the specialty and aim for that.
I was hungry today, so I just went with all steak instead of trying to order everything. I'm just gonna get a meal in.
Cool.
Let's do it. Let's dive into some food.
All right. So what was your kind of first experience with iFixit? We've been at this quite a while, and I'm curious, because I first came across RepairShopr when we were setting up iFixit Pro, and we were kind of researching and figuring out what was the best kind of software, and so I tested all the software out there, and I liked RepairShopr, and then reached out and said, hey, we should collaborate. But I'm curious kind of what your history is with iFixit.
iFixit was like a household name in my mind because of the repair guides and all the cool stuff we were doing with the teardowns early on. So in my computer repair shop, we never really noticed iFixit, but when I started doing screens, I was doing in the 3G, 3GS for 4 days. So I kind of self-taught on YouTube and then started referring to the iFixit guides and just fell in love with the work you guys were doing with teardowns and doing documentation and providing that to everybody. And honestly, I didn't even know you guys sold parts until much later. I was all over the guides.
Yeah. We've always kind of had weak penetration in the traditional PC repair shop world, primarily because the manufacturers have done a pretty good job of supporting. The hardware is relatively easy to take apart. So like I've got a big beefy PC desktop that we're building here for our video editor, and you don't need a repair guide to tell you how to work on this thing. It is intuitively obvious. It's a PC, you do the thing. PC laptops are a little less intuitive, but there's still you don't need the manual all the time. You just need it every once in a while. As time has gone on, PC laptops have gotten harder to work on.
Yeah, in my day, you could pretty much do a screen, hard drive, RAM, keyboard without a manual.
Mm-hmm.
There was always that random like VIO where you'd want to find the clips so you didn't break it or whatever.
Right.
That's probably dating myself.
And so when you were doing that kind of thing, did you have access to pirated Sony manuals, or like Dell and HP make their manuals available?
I think what I would do, it's been a long time. Started my repair business in 2003. I wasn't doing many repairs after like 2009. I was kind of doing the MSP stuff. But back in the day, I think if I needed a part for Sony, I would go to eBay and type in like power jack or whatever, and just description photo looked like what I needed. And that was kind of all I did. That was all I could do.
And then you weren't, because with the shop that I was at, we had a big FTP server with all the manuals everybody ever was able to find. I feel like everybody's got their stash of.
Yeah, I had a NAS full of software installers.
Yeah.
ISOs and stuff, but I stored manuals. I was never really a manual kind of person.
There's a guy, I just got back from Australia where I was speaking at a conference, and there's a guy who runs a website called Tim's Laptop Repair Manuals.
Okay.
And it's kind of the best collection of PC service manuals online, PC laptop. It's a great site. Unfortunately, over time, he posted them, and then he's been getting more and more takedowns from manufacturers. So his site is getting less useful over time, although that's not his fault.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, so that's probably like a good segue into repair.org and what yeah, so like the whole idea of people being allowed to repair their stuff really resonates with like everybody in this space.
Right.
How's that been going? What are you guys doing on that front? What do you think still needs to be done?
So there's a lot of action right now with all the state legislation. But just to step back, I mean, we looked at the kind of environment. I mean, iFixit was always started because we had problems getting repair information from Apple. And so we said, well, if Apple's not going to share repair information, you really do need a step-by-step guide to help you figure out how to take apart an iPhone. Like the original iPhone was very challenging to open. And there was no way you're opening that without destroying the first couple that you pulled apart. The iPad is the same way. Now we're all really good at fixing iPads, but if I handed you an iPad you'd never seen one before and you didn't have YouTube or some kind of guide, you'd break it. So we needed to bypass Apple's complete copyright lockdown on manuals. So we've been writing our own. And YouTube has helped with that. Now it's more about like board level schematics and more detailed diagnostic software. Things like Apple has this magic tool evidently to remap a new Touch ID sensor to the iPhone, which they've got those deployed in all their stores. Theoretically, they can make it available to everybody, but they don't. So identifying that we have this problem where manufacturers in opposition to the repair world, and then I spend a lot of time, and I tend to kind of back up, go to first principles, and say, well, how is the world structured? Is it the way that I want it to work, or is it the way that's ideal for either the aftermarket, for consumers, for the environment? And I realized that I learned that there was right to repair legislation for cars, but nobody had ever done anything like that for everything else. So we're like, hey, this is really interesting. And so I dove into the history, like where did this car right to repair thing come from? And it turns out that all of the car mechanics are just really well organized. And they have an organization called the Auto Care Association that is lobbying on behalf of them and has been like making sure that local mechanics are protected from kind of the predations of the manufacturers. And they've been around a really long time, and they've been very effective. And even they have had trouble. So they actually started trying to pass auto right to repair, a more recent electronics updated one in 2000. And they went to Congress because that seemed like the obvious thing. They went to Congress. They said, hey, we should get a bill. And they got some folks, some congressmen to sponsor it. And they started running through the process. And they spent 2 or 3 years trying their hardest to get this bill passed. And Ford and GM were very aggressive and were able to shut them down at every pass. Wow. So that was, and so then they decided to change their strategy, and they said, well, if Congress is too hard to get this through, maybe we could get it through in a state. And they started with they tried several states. They tried in New Jersey, they tried in Oregon, they tried in Massachusetts a few different times, and they didn't succeed in any of them. And so then they said, all right, well, let's just put it on the ballot and ask people to vote. And they picked Massachusetts because it seemed like a friendly place to do it. And got it on the ballot in Massachusetts. And then once it got on the ballot, then the manufacturer was like, whoa, we don't want this ballot initiative. Maybe we'll let your bill through the legislature. And so they actually, in the same year, passed both the bill through the legislature and voters approved by something like 87%.
Wow. And that legislation was basically making manufacturers put out manuals and sell parts? It says manufacturers have to make manuals, parts available, and it mandated design changes to cars, and it says that they have to use a standard diagnostic interface for the cars. So it's actually a much more aggressive bill than what we've been proposing with electronics. Electronics were saying, we'll figure out the diagnostic piece later, just make parts and manuals and the same kind of software that they make available. Interesting. The coalition that got auto right to repair done was a ragtag group. I mean, you had some big players like AAA involved, but you also had just a lot of local shops pushing for this. Yeah.
So kind of being a student of history and saying, okay, this is interesting. They've gotten this done. My phone keeps ringing here. This is what happens when I leave for lunch. This is probably all right to repair stuff. Yeah. The learning how much of a challenge it was for them going up against the auto manufacturers, we expected that this would be a hard battle. And so we set up repair.org to kind of be that group to work on behalf of all of the repair industry. And repair.org is not some big monolithic organization. It is one lady volunteering her time and the rest of us kind of chipping in. So folks like Jessa and Lewis and others pitching in their time and helping. Unfortunately, we've gotten advice from a lot of smart people. A lot of folks who have a lot of legislative history have been willing to give us advice. We've been able to talk with legislators in all these states. And so this year, so we were trying to figure out how do we get a whole bunch more states to introduce bills, because in the past we've really only had legislation introduced, like we did it in South Dakota, and then we did it in Minnesota, and then we did it in New York last year, but then New York's budget cycle took up all of their time, and so they didn't even have time to get to thinking about our issue. And so we had this bright idea last year that we'd go to this conference where all the state legislators were at. So this is called NCSL, the National Council of State Legislators. And out of 12,000 state legislators, like 4,000 of them are at this conference. And then what we did was Matt Z came with me, and we just set up a stand, and we said, we'll fix your phone for free. And so we had all these legislators coming by with phones with cracked screens, or they wanted a new battery or something. And so we ended up fixing phones for something like 10 or 15 different senators from Tennessee. And they really liked it. And then, so Matt was fixing their phone, and while he was fixing their phone, they were kind of a captive audience, and I told them about the problem and the situation, and then it was great. All of them got a 10 or 15 minute spiel from me. And sometimes I'd look over at Matt. I'm like, hey, can you take a little bit longer on this repair? I want to spend a bit more time talking. It worked great. So that's what got us to today, where we have 8 different states that have introduced legislation this year. And Apple has declared basically thermonuclear war and has decided they're going to pull out all the stops and lie and scheme and whatever they have to do to stop the legislation.
Unfortunate.
But we can beat them, and I mean, like you look at how the Auto Care Association beat Ford and GM. They put it in front of the people, and they said, "Hey, do you want to be able to take your car to a local mechanic?" And 87% of Massachusetts said yes, and so I think we can do the same thing.
I'm going to hit you with a tough question. Ready? What do you say to a small hardware prototyper that wants to get into making hardware? Maybe they're going to Kickstarter some cool gadget, Pebble watches or something, I don't know, that says, like, it would be a burden for me to put out schematics and manuals for my fledgling little ups. Like, what do you tell that guy?
Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. On the other hand, there is an environmental impact to manufacturing anything. And the burden is make the same manuals and parts available that you do to your authorized dealers. So if you don't have authorized dealers, that helps. But I don't think we should be making monolithic hardware, even if it's in low volume, that can't be serviced and repaired where you're not thinking about the product life cycle. So I know the folks at Pebble, they're a good example of a hardware startup where they're small and teeny, but they absolutely factored repairability into their business plan and their devices, and we were pressuring them and saying, hey guys, come on, can you sell us a battery? I don't really think that Do you have parts for Pebbles and manuals? We've got manuals for them. We were never able to get parts, really. I should talk with Eric and see the CEO. Now that he's not involved anymore, maybe he can hook us up with their suppliers and maybe they can get us some. The market is really biased in favor of startups and getting something going. At CES in January, there were 20,000 new gadgets that were introduced. So if the market is such that we can introduce 20,000 new things and throw them at the wall and see what sticks, I would, I think, rather from a societal perspective say, well, maybe let's increase the friction a little bit to creating new gizmos and make sure that the ones that have a path, have something in place where they can be managed.
Do you hear any good opposition arguments from the big guys, from the Apples or whatever?
Yeah, the biggest argument that we get is that, well, people are going to hurt themselves.
Well, no, I need good arguments. Are there any good?
No, there are no good arguments, but let me just talk you through their arguments because if I don't have good ones to talk to, I got to talk about something. So they say people are going to hurt themselves. So clearly this is preposterous. We were actually, there was a meeting in Minnesota, and this was one of the few times where we actually got to sit around the table and Apple was at the table. It was convened by the state senator, and Apple was killed the bill the previous year, and in exchange the senator said, well, if you're going to kill the bill, fine, I'll kill it, but you're going to sit down at a meeting with all the repair shops and we're going to hash through this. And so they convened the meeting. The environmental agency in Minnesota actually put it together. So we met at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and we had like 10 local businesses that were all Computers for Schools, Minnesota, and Tech Dump, which is a local recycler, lots of nonprofits that are putting people back to work. And then we had the 2 senators and the lobbyists from CompTIA, which we need to talk about, and the lobbyists from Apple. And the Apple guy said, yeah, people are going to hurt themselves. And my response was, the only people I've seen hurt themselves on Apple products have been people who are using their phone with cracked glass and slicing their finger open.
Yeah.
Right?
What did they say? How did people hurt themselves?
He just rolled his eyes at me and ignored me.
So, You hear people, I hear people around the community saying like, be careful with a battery or whatever. Is that kind of the base of the argument? Maybe they explode a battery or something.
Yeah, I mean, if you take it apart and you take a screwdriver and you stab the battery,
yeah,
you can probably make it ignite, right? It's also probably not going to hurt you, right? I mean, you have to kind of like stab the battery and then hold it against your arm in order to. This is a very challenging thing. I challenge try to hurt yourself with one of these things.
Yeah.
The part of the challenge is that you have lawyers making these decisions, and lawyers always tend to be risk averse.
Yeah. Well, there's risk out there.
Yeah, and so you have to get to a point where the business people tell the lawyers, hey, this is a risk that we're going to take. You got to deal with it, and maybe our insurance premium goes up by 0.1% or something, and that's okay. But realistically, I think that there is very little risk. I mean, you look in the car world where people are changing the brakes on their cars, and the manufacturers are providing manuals for them to change brakes on their cars. You can go down to AutoZone and buy the parts, put it in. I changed the brakes on my car the other day. This is just the state of things. And so to say, well, it was actually crazy. The manufacturers told us that electronics were more dangerous to work on than cars. And we're like, at some point you just lose all credibility. And they're trying to explain that, the iPhone is so much more sophisticated than a car. And we're like, hey, the typical motor vehicle these days has 13 microcontrollers in it. They're very sophisticated. A lot of them have touch screens. Like the same technology that's in the iPhone is in the car, plus a whole bunch of mechanical systems.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So I'll tell you, it was interesting. As I've been doing this work, I've gotten to talk with a lot of folks, and I got to talk with AAA. And I talked with their national head of repairs, and I was asking him what mechanics do when they have computers in cars that fail. He says, well, we just swap out the whole unit. I'm like, okay, so you have this like $2,000 computer board from the car. You got to go to BMW, get a new $2,000 computer board. Is anyone doing board level repairs on those things? And he says, no, absolutely not. And I'm like, but that thing is really big. I'm like, we can fix an iPhone board that's this big, and it's this big. Like, I bet we could fix that thing. So I think there's a huge opportunity for repair shops to reach out to their local mechanic friends and say, hey, when you're throwing away these computer boards, instead of throwing them away, give them to me. I'll tinker with them. And then when I find something that I can fix, maybe the next time you get it, you give it to me, and then we can get kind of a core return thing going. We had one of our staff had it was a really old, 25-year-old Lexus with some, he'd put in an aftermarket stereo, which had a touch screen. And I think the LCD failed. And so he had to swap it, and it involved soldering a 50-pin wide ribbon cable from the new LCD onto it. And it was painstaking, but you can absolutely do that. But you couldn't take that particular thing into any local car shop or car audio and have them do it. But your local PC or cell phone shop could do that. So I think there's a huge number of skills that we have that we could start applying to other industries.
Yeah, I can see that. I love how you guys are putting out manuals and parts for other like non-PC things. You want to tell us a little bit more about that? I think last time we talked it was drone parts. Maybe this was a year ago.
Yeah.
drone parts.
We've been doing drones and GoPros.
Yeah.
GoPros have been really popular. I think that's a super great growth industry for the pro world.
And you've got manuals and parts?
Yeah, we've got manuals and parts. Yeah, and if you there's some devices that you have where we don't have the parts in stock, get in touch with us because some of them, they've been so popular, we've been selling out as soon as we get them, and then we order a bunch more. But there's one, I know one repair shop in Texas where they set up shop on the weekends at a dirt bike track, and they're just fixing GoPros all day long. They've been a major customer from us for parts. We have relationships with the biggest electronics recycler in the country. So if a repair shop comes to us and says, hey, I'm seeing a whole lot of this particular gizmo, this espresso machine, or this particular TV, we can go out and get those parts and then make them available to shops, even if the manufacturer won't sell them to us. So we're rolling out more parts like that. We're going to be experimenting with TVs later this year. We're doing a lot with Chromebooks. I think we're starting to stock more Chromebook parts, and I think that that's something that's really growing as schools have pretty much completely switched to Chromebooks.
They're a cool little basic laptop replacement.
Yeah. And I'm seeing photos. It's like the photos of everybody's workbench with all the iPhone LCDs. I'm seeing that with Chromebooks. Like, here's 200 Chromebook LCDs I swapped. So it's absolutely, I think, a growth industry. We have to diversify. We have to provide ourselves with more revenue streams. And that's true for iFixit. That's true for a local shop.
If someone has some devices they've been seeing, what's the best way for them to go ping you guys on that? Do you have a request a part page?
Yeah, email our pro team. So it's pro@ifixit.com, and they'll
and our viewers probably.
Yeah, it's Matt Z and Kevin, and yeah, if you've talked with them, yeah, reach out to them and ask them, hey, this is the kind of thing I'm seeing. If we get those requests from a few different shops, then we'll see what we can do to pull it together. Same thing with the repair guides. We're adding manuals for everything we possibly can. I'm sending out a batch today of we got something like 400 different devices. So these are like Android cell phones and things that we don't have on iFixit, and I'm sending them out to people that are going to be writing manuals for them.
Oh.
So if you're on iFixit, you're like, iFixit's awesome, but there's this one Sony phone that we see, or particularly internationally, there's phones in Europe that are more popular that we just don't have here. Like, let us know. It'd really be helpful if you had a manual for this, and then we'll get it on the queue.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right.
It can be a lot of work for people to pull apart, take apart the phone, photograph the whole thing. So we can kind of do some of that heavy lifting, and then have have the community help us with troubleshooting. So, okay, I was following this guide and put my phone back together and I get a red screen now. What do you think? That troubleshooting aspect is really where the pro community has been incredibly helpful to us.
Makes sense. Cool. Yeah, the photo and the guide and the framework and the place to put all that is a really valuable resource. That's cool.
So we're going to be doing some more tighter integrations of some of our guides with RepairShopr.
Yeah, we definitely have you guys in our queue. We had a bunch of stuff come up first of the year, but we've got a cool iFixit project coming up. I'd say we're a couple weeks out at this point.
Awesome.
Cool stuff cooking again. You were like our first electronic ordering integration, and now we're going to do it with you, and we're going to try and sneak some other cool stuff in there. So that'll be really fun.
Yeah, so right now you can hook it up and buy parts. You set up your iFixit account, set up your RepairShopr account, and you can tie them together. We want to make that ordering even better, and then we want to integrate the repair information. And that's also, I'd really like feedback from anybody that's watching. Hey, like, I like iFixit, but your iPad opening procedure is too slow. It's the consumer approach, and that's fine for consumers, but I'm a pro. I'm smarter. I know what I'm doing. That's true. You already know what you're doing, but then you hire somebody. You got to train them. I want to make sure that I have a procedure that's relevant for training them.
Mm.
We actually used to have an iPad opening procedure that was more similar to what pros use today, and we found too many consumers were breaking their devices using a heat gun, and so we switched to our iOpener, which is just a safer way for you to open an iPad the first time, but it's not the fastest way. And so I think we need probably two paths through a device. We need the safe way for the first time, and we need the pro way that has all the shortcuts built in it.
Okay. I wonder if there's something we could do with the wiki there. We've been trying to... We did like a wiki v2 recently for our internal. And I know a lot of people put internal guides there in their RepairShopr accounts. We'll have to do some brainstorming there, see where we can get access to the iFixit stuff inside RepairShopr.
Sure. Yeah, everything on iFixit is on our API, ifixit.com/API. You can integrate it into anything. And even if you're just building a one-off internal app for your shop, like go ahead, snag our code. You can actually, if you're on any guide and you hit options, you can grab an embed, and it just gives you an iframe. You can embed any iFixit guide just like you can a YouTube video anywhere. It's just one line of code.
Oh yeah, hear that, shops? Go ahead and do your internal stuff this way. There's some cool tools there.
The other thing, if you haven't set up a team page for your business, is add your business to iFixit, invite all your techs, and then all of their individual reputation shows up under your shop's reputation. So if your techs are bored or on the weekends they're answering questions on iFixit, that reputation, their technical credibility gets added to your shop. And then we have pretty darn good Google placement. So having us with information about your shop listed.
So you guys have a directory of shops, and then people Google iPhone repair, whatever.
Yeah. And we'll even send people. We're like, hey, you're looking at an iPhone, display install, and you're in Seattle, and maybe the consumer isn't sure they want to do it themselves. Then we'll send people to a local shop instead.
Awesome.
And we have a lot of people. I mean, we had something like 94 million people on iFixit in the last year. So even if you drill down to any location, that means that there's tens of thousands of people in Seattle that are on iFixit every month looking for how to fix things.
Awesome. We'll remind everybody.
Awesome.
Word out. Cool. This was really good. I think we should wrap it and maybe schedule these soon.
All right. Well, RepairShopr, you guys are doing awesome work. Very impressed. Probably continues to get better. And it's been fun seeing you build out your software team. We had a bigger software team earlier than you did, but you're rapidly catching up.
Yeah, growing, adding shops, making people happy.
Awesome. Absolutely. I'm really excited to see as shops get in, they're fixing things other than phones.
Yeah,
Telescopes
we're seeing a lot of those. We've got cuckoo clock repair and
wow.
building repair and all kinds of stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the vision, is that repair is a frame of mind. I'm not a cell phone repair technician. I'm a repair technician. And if I'm good at fixing cell phones, I'm probably also good at fixing a lot of other things too.
Totally. I second that. If you like fixing stuff, and it doesn't matter.
Fixers unite.
Heck yeah. All right. Kyle,
awesome.
Good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is fun.
All right.
All right, we'll talk soon. See you, Trey.